Ando with DevExpress, and welcome to today's webinar, ASP.NET Tips and Tricks, presented by DevExpress Technical Evangelist Paul Usher. Take your ASP.NET application to the next level, see how to create and bind different reports at runtime with selection filters, own scheduling with custom fields and templates, harness the power of the grid lookup control, and discover the toolbox. Find some of the hidden gems that can dramatically speed up your next project. There will be a Q&A session at the end of this presentation, but as always, you can enter your questions at any time in the questions section of your GoToWebinar control panel. Now, before we get started, the DevExpress team would love to know a little bit more about all of you joining us today. So I do have a couple of poll questions for you. And here is the first one. Are you a DevExpress customer? You can select one of the following. Yes or no. It's an easy one. And I'll give everyone just a second to get their answers in. All right, it looks like about 58% yes, 42% no. Great. And then our second question is, what is your primary development platform? You can select, again, one of the following: ASP.NET, WinForms, HTML5, WPF, or Silverlight. And I'll give everyone a second. So it looks like 58% ASP.NET, 35% WinForms. And then, do you use DevExpress ASP.NET controls exclusively? Again, select one of the following, yes or no. So it looks like 80% no, 20% yes. Good to know. And then our final question, we did a Getting Started with ASP.NET webinar back in April. Paul just wants to know how many saw that webinar. So it looks like about 30% yes, 70% no. All right. Thank you so much for your valuable feedback. And again, thank you so much for joining us. I will now hand things over to Paul Usher.
Thanks, Amanda. Good morning, everyone. So I'm Paul Usher, a technical evangelist here at DevExpress. And today we're going to take a look at some of the tips and tricks and more in-depth use of some of the ASP.NET controls. This webinar is a bit of a build-up on the last one we did, hence I asked that question before. And it doesn't matter for those that didn't manage to see it. We're going to be doing a quick review on some of the functionality we added. So taking a look at what we're going to run through today, we'll review that ASP.NET application that we built, and then we're going to delve into the grid lookup control. I'm going to build out some customized scheduling forms, show you how to implement a criteria option on your web form, have a look at the file manager control, and also a quick look at a new tool for helping you deploy your ASP.NET projects. As Amanda said, we will have a question time at the end, but feel free anytime during the presentation to ask your questions, and some of the team will be along to help as we go. So all this is made possible with the DXperience ASP.NET Suite. Now, the suite has been built on some core principles. The first one being that we understand when you develop applications, you want controls that are fast. You want high performance. And we've been able to achieve that across the entire board. On our website at the moment, there's a demonstration of using the ASP.NET Grid View control and just how fast some of the caching and data loading is. You can see from this slide that we were capable of raising more than 650,000 records in under half a second. The second part of this is that we understand the look and feel of your site is important. So our team of designers have done a fantastic job of providing themes to allow you to deliver a really rich UI to your end user. The third aspect is that we understand your page is going to be run on multiple devices, multiple browsers, and multiple operating systems. So all the controls are strictly tested across leading platforms, giving you just that pure option of being able to feel comfortable your site will run anywhere. And the final pivot point here is that we understand that productivity matters. So the controls are designed to allow you to get up to speed as quickly as possible. We've got our world-class support team behind that, and even for customers or potential customers, we provide technical support during your trial period. So it's important that when you're building your site, you've got that knowledge that productivity matters to us, and so does the support. Inside the actual suite, we've got a number of different controls. We've got the Office-inspired controls, such as the grid view, the Navigator or Outlook style concertina bar. We've got the HTML editor, the scheduler control. We've then got some powerful layout and docking controls, such as the tab panels. We've got the draggable dock panels, the form layout control, which lays all the controls on the format for you so that, again, you don't have to worry about positioning. On the right-hand side, you can see we've got a number of multi-use controls, such as the buttons, the text boxes. We've got things in there such as the capture control, the image slider, and the file manager, which we'll look at today. Moving along, we can see that there's a number of additional scheduler controls, such as the time zone editor, the month picker. We've got our powerful business and reporting controls, the report viewer, the toolbar. We've got the pivot grid, the charting controls, which we looked at briefly last time. And then we've got the editors that help with all the data. Can be bound and really simple to set up. So in all, there's over 90 ASP.NET controls available in the suite. What we'll do now is we'll head over to Visual Studio and give you a quick snapshot on the application that we produced last time. I'm not going to spend too long going through it, as we will be interacting as the presentation goes on. First thing we'll do is just run this up. Today I'm going to be using Internet Explorer. And we can see that this page that we created features a menu bar, which gave us a drop down and options from here. We were able to implement a nice Office-inspired toolbar control with different options. On the left, we have the concertina nav bar, so we can collapse and expand panels as we need. And then just in this client area, I've set up where the page is going to be rendered. On the Employees tab, we've got the data view, which allows us a rich template-based card layout. I can scroll through the data looking at the different paging options. We came down into the order section and took a look at the ASPX grid view control. Now, this control is blistering fast. Functionality-wise, straight out of the box, there is no code behind this particular example. What I can do is simply drag a column header into the top bar, and you'll see that the grid is going to be automatically grouped by the customer ID. I can expand one of those customers, and we'll see orders just for that customer. I can take that one step further, and I can start to add additional columns to group by. So now we're going to experience the fact that not only can we group by the customer, we've now got the employees listed underneath them with the orders. If I want to undo my grouping, I can simply drag that back. And you'll be able to see that the little arrows help make sure that when I position the column back, it's going to go exactly where I want. The grid view also supports filtering. So I could come along and say only employee ID number 3, and all those records would be filtered. Again, I can apply multiple filters, or I can come along and say clear. The grid out of the box supported sorting. Simply click on a column header, and you're going to see that the sorting's already happened. And if I hold the Shift key down, I can also sort on multiple columns. So here I'm sorting on customer ID and employee ID. I want to do employee ID in reverse order, so I click it again, and we'll see that instantly that changes. So some real power and speed coming out of that control. I've got this one hooked up so I can create a new record or edit a record in line, and we'll see that the panel exposes, all the boxes, all the fields are available, and where applicable, the built-in controls will display. So we've got a feature-rich set of controls behind the scene. Here we've got the date control showing. If I tap on the month, I can jump out and navigate very quickly, not only to different months, but to different years. Okay, if we now move down to the product section, what we had a look at here was how to bind a chart control with a pivot grid. Very quickly, I can drop a field onto the pivot grid, and we'll see that the chart's updated in real time. If I drag the units in stock into the item area, we'll see that the chart is updated, and as I move my mouse over, the values are then reported on the tooltip. I can drag another column in here, and again we see instantly that beautiful relationship between the pivot grid and the chart. We took a quick look at the scheduler control. This was bound to the orders table and displayed the orders for a particular day. I can look at the day view, I can look at a work week, a week, or even a month and see that information. And straight from the form I can navigate to any other date I want. If I right click, I've got context sensitive help. I can change how the information is displayed. I can delete the item. If I choose open, we're going to see a really nice panel is rendered. And again, this is all out of the box functionality, so there's no code behind. And then finally, we looked at the reporting mechanism, where we could create a custom report and embed it inside the web page with a nice navigation system which will let me page through, a good ability to search for things, and also export to any of the industry standard outputs. So that's the starting point for today's presentation. We're going to extend some of that functionality. So the first thing we're going to do is look at the ASPX grid lookup and where that might be useful. We're going to start by adding a new web form into our project, and we'll call this one Product Extra. So the first step now is to then bind that new form into our main screen. And this is done simply by coming up to the navbar control, expanding the smart tag and choosing groups. I'm going to come down to the products option inside the editor, and I'm going to insert a item in its items collection. We can see that the current navigate URL is pointing to the products page, and we're going to leave that as is. What we're going to do is add a child item underneath. So click on the button, add a new child item, and I'm going to call this one Product Info. Choose the Navigate URL option and point it straight to the Product Extra web form, changing the target to _content. We've used a iframe for this example purely for speed and to move things along. Obviously, if we were using master pages, we wouldn't need to worry so much about the target. Inside this properties window, I can go through, I could apply an image control if I wanted to and give it some really nice look and feel. I can apply a tooltip. We'll just leave that as a one child element, and when we click OK, we can see straight away that on the navbar we now have the product info page ready. So let's close that page and go back to our main form. We'll switch to the design view. Now most of the controls for the DevExpress range can be found by typing ASPX in the search bar inside Visual Studio 2012. In this case, I want the grid. So as I start to type grid, we can see the filter limits, and we've got a few options here. To start with, I'm going with the ASPX grid lookup control. I drag that onto the form, and we're going to now choose a data source. As with the previous presentation, everything I do here is bound to the Northwind database. So we're just going to select database and move along. My existing connection string is in place. And now I get to choose what I want to display. I'm going to select the categories table, and I'm going to choose the category ID, name, and description. Choose next, and just make sure that that's the data that I want to see, and finish. Now if I press the columns option here inside the smart tag, we're going to see the columns editor appear, and straight away we'll notice that the fields have been brought in, and more so that the caption that's going to be displayed has already been broken up. So using camel case detection, it knows that category ID, category name are separate words. We'll see on the right hand side that the field name is bound, and there's a lot of little properties in here that allow you to take complete control over the look and feel at a granular level of the control. In this instance, I don't want the ID showing when it comes to dropping down the list. So I'm going to change the visible property to false and then close out of there. So if we just save that and run, let's have a look at what we have so far. We'll bring the application up. The normal page will render, and we'll select the product info option on the navbar control. So we have just a plain looking combo box at that point. I click drop down, and we can see we've got two columns. We've got category name and description, and if I choose one of the options, the values are returned to the top. Now interestingly, by default, it's returning all three fields with a field separator. I don't want to see that. I only want to see the category name. So to achieve that, I'd come back into the properties option, and as we scroll through the properties, we can see first of all that we've got the key field name. Now this is the one representing which field will be bound as a value to the control, and yes, we want category ID, so I'm okay with that. We've got the multi-text separator, so you noticed when we had run it before there was a semicolon between the field names. If we want to change that to something else, we could do it there. But what I'm interested in is this text format string. Now if I drop that down, you'll notice that the default value is three placeholders, 0, 1, and 2, which is what it was displaying. We only want to see field 1, which is category name. So I'm simply going to apply that, run the project again, only this time when we select the drop down, we're going to see just the name displayed. So that's a really cool feature to limit what the user is going to display. Now on that properties window, there are a lot of other feature-rich things we can do. Inside the grid view properties, I could turn on things such as the filtering. So as we'd expect to see inside a normal grid control we looked at before, we have the filter row, we can turn off header controls. You've got so much functionality and features that you can play with to get the exact functionality that you want to achieve on your end result. Now we've got the control, it's bound to the data source and it's returning a nice visual aspect. Let's do something useful with it. I'm going to drag the ASPX grid view control onto the form, and I'm going to bind this to a new data source, again pointing at Northwind, and we're going to choose the products table. As a quick example, I'm going to choose product ID, name, category ID, unit price, and discontinued. Actually, we'll choose units in stock instead. Choose next, test the query, and we can see that yes, that's the data I want. Press finish, and straight away the grid is populated with all those columns. I'm going to leave all the standard controls off. I'm not going to apply any of the filtering or selections at that point. What we'll do now is inside the property window, we'll just set the client instance name. We're going to call that grid. So on the ASPX grid lookup control, I need some interaction between the control itself and how we're going to talk to the grid. I'm going to choose the client-side events to do this. There's a client-side event called value changed. And inside value changed, I'm simply going to put grid.perform callback. So that's going to call the custom callback method on the grid and pass some parameters. Now S is the sender that's been passed into this function at the client side. And then I want to say get grid view. So this is now telling it to look at the lower level control that the combo box is bound to. And I want to get the row key property from that grid view. But the row key that I want to deal with is obviously the selected row. So we're going to say get grid view and then get focused row index. Oops, just move my editor across so I can see it all. index, and then close that method off. So if we take a quick look at that, we're saying grid, which is the client instance name of the ASPX grid view control on the form. We want to implement the perform callback method on that control, passing in S for sender, which is me, get grid view, get the row key of the current focused row. Quite straightforward. Click OK. Now on the ASPX grid view control, we then want to listen to or instantiate the method for the custom callback. So I'm going to do that here. Double click. And now what I want to do is say, okay, we're going to be receiving some parameters with the callback method. ASPX grid view 1 dot filter expression. So the filtering that I showed you before on the actual grid view control can be accessed at runtime with the filter expression property. And what we're going to say here is string.format. We're going to give it the field name, so category ID equals a placeholder, and then e dot parameters 0. So we're saying filter expression property on the grid view control, match category ID to the parameter. Now, providing I've typed everything correctly, when we run, we should now see some nice interaction. So we'll spin this up in the browser, come down to the product info page, and there's the grid control showing all 8 pages of our products. I can skip through there, do the usual things. But when I drop down this combo now, I'm going to choose confectionery, and we'll see instantly that the grid is limited by category ID. Choose a different one. Let's choose meat. We've got category 6. Maybe go to beverages. We've got category 1. So we can see that very, very quickly we can add custom style filtering, have that rich feedback implementing a small bit of client-side code, small bit of server-side code, and you've got a really nice function in your page. Next, we'll take a look at the scheduler control. So we saw here that already out of the box, without any extra work from me, we've got some really nice looking forms that already all the data binding is done and all the inbuilt boxes and control sets are built. But what happens if I want to change that around a little bit? Maybe I have a custom field that I want to display, or I just don't want to display as much information as we're seeing there. Well, it's really quite simple. We'll start by bringing up the schedule form. I'm going to switch through to design mode and click on the Smart tag. Well, before I do that, I'm just going to pin the Solution Explorer there so you can see what's happening. Now when I click on the Smart tag, there's an option here that says Copy Default Dialog Forms to the project. And effectively what this will do is extract the resources in the DLLs out directly into your project as code that you can interact with and manipulate. So I'm going to select that option. We get a confirmation box here saying, hey, you're about to do something that effectively is going to change your project. And if Visual Studio asks you any questions, make sure that you answer in the affirmative. There are some things to watch when you do this process. So we'll say yes, and we'll see on the right-hand side already that forms are being added. Visual Studio is now prompting to confirm that I am wanting to do some behind-the-scenes binding, so I'm just going to say yes to their prompts. But now what you'll notice is I've got this new folder called DevExpress. Inside the folder, I've got this folder called ASPX Schedule Forms. And if I expand this, I get all the forms that the scheduler controller uses. So we can see at the top here, we've got the appointment form. I'm going to double-click the appointment form. And the first thing you'll notice is that we've got this big comment block. Do not modify this file. Not that scary. Interestingly, everything you need to do, every step you need to perform to work on this form is detailed for you. These comments step through from 1 all the way through to 10 to provide help in what you need, what you can do, what you should do. Now the best practice is, as soon as you've implemented these forms, is to change this folder name. That way, if you click on the feature again, you're not going to be overwriting any work you've done, because obviously that would be frustrating. If we click to the design time view of this form, we can see that here's the appointment layout. We can see the different controls that have been bound, the placeholders for the buttons, etc. If I wanted to implement a custom field, I can add my control onto the form and then set up the binding as per the instructions in the code behind. Because of the time constraints, I'm going to go the other way. I'm actually going to hide a number of these controls from the user. So I'm going to come along and just select some of these controls. Do it this way, makes it easier. Maybe get rid of the status field. And then select these again. Maybe I can go back to mouse school. Okay, we're going to bring up the properties window, and I'll do it the longer way. And just quickly change visible to false on these options here. Visible is false, etc. You get the idea anyway. So when I run this project again now, I'll just do this last one. Visible is false. What we're expecting to see is some of these controls actually missing. So I'm going to save that and run the project. We're going to come down to the scheduler option. And when I right click and say open this form, what we'll notice straight away is this white area below, which is where those particular assets were. Obviously, just using your standard HTML skills, you can shrink the form up, you can interact in whichever way you want. But it really just extends that power and functionality of the scheduler control. Now, there's one other thing to consider, and that is what it did to the scheduler properties on my main form. As we step through, we'll notice things like the options form. Now, all these URLs have been pre-built to point to the extracted files. So if you rename the folder from DevExpress to your folder name, you need to come through and just apply the URL back to your new place, so the binding will happen. Otherwise, when you run, you'll end up with an error. But there's all the forms extracted. I've got full interaction, and again, such a powerful feature-rich set. I can use almost no code and still be able to control every aspect of my scheduler. So let's take a quick look at the reporting. Now, in the standard report, we went through and we built a report with the ASPX report wizard, and we had this 333-page report, which is nice. We can do the searching, we can do the printing, we can jump between pages. The binding was all taken care of for us, and so on and so forth. Obviously, we've got the export functionality, all nice. But I don't want to print 333 pages. I might want to limit the report at this point. What we're going to take a look at today is how we will implement something such as a country filter and show orders by a specific country. So we'll start out by moving over to the report form. Bring up the controller and switch to design view. Now what we have here, if we just insert a break here, we're going to bring up the ASPX report viewer, and we've got this tool inside the toolbox called the report parameters panel. I'm simply going to drag that up onto the canvas, and in the smart tag it's asking which report viewer I want to link it to. I drop that down. It detects that there's only one report viewer on the form, so I'm going to choose that. Now, if you recall, or for those that weren't at the previous webinar, what you can do is the report toolbar is linked to a report viewer. The report viewer is linked to a report, and now we've got this parameters panel that's linked to the report viewer as well. I'm going to just save that. When it comes to interacting with the parameters panel, there's a couple of things we need to consider. First of all, we want to build a custom parameter. So inside the events panel, I'm going to choose the customize parameter editors and double click. I'll just get rid of that. And I said before that we're going to bind this to the countries list. So the first thing I'm going to do is just bring in a list of countries. Obviously this could be a data source. In this example, I'm just using a collection of strings. So we've got a read-only string array with a list of countries as we go across the page. Nothing special. Now inside this customize parameter editors method, I need to actually tell the editor to use a combo box full of these countries. So before we do that, we'll just import the DevExpress web editors. And now I'm going to create a new ASPX combo box. I'm going to call it combo. So that will equal a new ASPX combo box. I'm going to set the combo box value type to a string. So this way it knows what type of object it's going to be dealing with. We'll just say type of string. Now I want to actually populate the combo items collection with what's inside the string array. So to do this, I'm going to implement a for each. And I'm going to say string country in countries. So there's my for each looping through the array of countries. And I'm simply going to say combo.items.add. And there are two parameters that I want to pass into the combo box. The first is the displayed value, so country, and the second is the actual object value, which in our case is the same thing. So we're just going to pass country in, and we can implement that as so. And then finally, we just need to tell the editor control that it's going to be bound to the combo box. So we've got that, that there. And that's all the code we should need to add as far as binding that parameters control back to our report. Now obviously the next or the final stage to this is to set up the report itself. So to do that, I'm going to double click on the extra report that we created. As we saw last time, we've got the powerful WYSIWYG editor here. I could jump in and preview the report at design time, and I've got things such as the inbuilt script editor and a whole host of other things. So the first thing I want to do is interact with the field list, and that's found under extra reports, and choose field list. We can see that we've got the data source and the table and a list of all the fields that are available in that table. And underneath there we've got this option called parameters. So I'm going to right click and I'm going to say add a parameter. Now the parameter name is going to be filter country. The description, which is what's going to be displayed on the web page, I'm going to say select country to filter. The data type is string, and I'm not going to apply a default value. So at this point I can simply say OK. And we now have a parameter. The next step that we would do would be to click on the glyph in the top left, which is going to expose the report tasks. Inside this panel is an option called filter string. I'm going to click on the ellipsis here to bring up the filter editor, and we get a nice visual option. So I'm going to say I want to add a new filter. Straight away we can see the list of fields. So I'm going to say I want to filter the ship country, and I want it to equal, and then I could type in a value, or I could click on the little pencil and say I want to compare it to another field, which is not what I want either. And so I click again, and we're going to see that the filter parameter is shown. And if I had multiple filters, clicking on this brings up the little dialog, and I could select which one I want. Simply going to click OK, save those changes, and then run the project. So what we're hoping to see now, thank you Internet Explorer, we'll run that again. Sometimes it doesn't like running things straight after each other. Let's clean and run. Here we go. So when we come down to reports, we're going to see that we have the report itself is blank. It's page 1 of 1 and there's no data showing. What we do have is the parameter showing up here, which is select country to filter. And when I drop down the list, here's the list of all the different countries that I added. So I'm going to choose Italy and say submit, and instantly we see that we now have a page 1 of 12 report. If I scroll down the page a little, there's information showing just for Italy. I'm going to choose a different country. I'm going to say Norway and submit, and you can see the report is filtering instantly into the viewer. Choose a different one, say Sweden, and bang, we have Sweden, page 1 of 15. UK. Beautiful. So I can implement multiple custom filters to interact with my report at runtime, which is really, really powerful. And the only code we needed to write was to populate this filter. If I was using a data source, then I wouldn't even have to write that. Best of all, I've still got the option of the export. And when I choose export to PDF, it's going to render out to that new window. And here's my PDF. I'm going to choose save and save it into that folder for use later on. Close that, and we've got some fantastic functionality inside our reporting. So we've extended some of the key functionality we've built previously. Let's take a quick look now at some of the other cool things that are available. Now, in the past, I've done a fair bit of work with SharePoint, and I know that a lot of clients more and more are asking for document management control, whether it be adding supplier manuals to their web page or giving the option for customers to be able to see invoices or other technical information. So let's take a look at what is involved in building something that's really quite powerful. We'll start out by adding a new web form to our project. We're going to come down and say new web form, and we'll call this one a doc manager. First thing we'll do is go to our main page, and we want to be able to get to the doc manager. So this time I'm going to use the menu control to handle this. Similar to the nav bar, click on the smart tag, and I have an items option here, and up comes the ASPX menu items editor. If we expand the child items for the file menu already, one of the things that I can do is actually add a child. So you'll see on the menu here it says add child item. I'm going to come down, change the text and say doc manager. I'm going to go to navigate URL, and I'm going to point to the doc manager ASPX file, and of course set the target to content. That's all I should need to do there. Click OK, and we've now got that ready to roll. So in the doc manager form itself, I'll come through and I'll say show me the file manager control. We can see the ASPX file manager. I'm going to drag that onto my canvas. In the Smart Tag window, I'm going to say I want the user to be able to create folders, rename, move, delete, and show the download button. Now, there's a lot of extra functionality behind here. You can set up access rules to specific folders for specific things. We're going to leave everything straight out of the box and just save those changes. The next thing I'm going to do is just create a new folder in my project, and I'm going to call this one Docs. So now, if I bring up the property window for the file manager, if I scroll down, I can come to settings, and I can set the root folder to say, when you display, I always want you to start in the docs folder. Now what we'll do is we'll simply save that. I'm going to run and see what functionality I've got. Into Internet Explorer, click on the File menu, and choose Doc Manager. We can see that the Doc Manager is rendered in the page. It's the only folder visible is the Docs folder. So I'm going to start by creating a new folder. I'm going to call this one Client Files. And then I'm going to create another new folder at the root level. I'm going to call this one Suppliers. And in fact, I don't want the word files on the end of client, so I want to click on that. I'm going to choose Rename. And I'm just going to get rid of the extra word, so client. Now I'm going to upload some files. So I'm going to choose the Browse option down this bottom right-hand corner. I've got a few files I want to put up there. There is an option to do a multi-file upload. It implements a Silverlight, well, you require Silverlight to use that part. So for today, I'm just going to quickly add the files that I want to see into that project. And we can see that we've got the 4 files. While the files are here, I can actually do a couple of really cool things. I'm going to go, oops, I didn't want that one, so I can delete it. I get a warning or a confirmation. I say yes, and it's gone. Let's add that one back in. The performance one. Click OK, and upload. The other really cool thing I can do is rename the files. So instead of this long verbose name, I'm going to come along and I'm going to call this one fast.png. You'll see straight away that the sorting that's turned on will reorder the files. I'm going to change the name of this one to nice.png. Now if I wanted to filter just to show the PNGs, I can come into the filter box and say .png. And we'll see that the PDFs are automatically hidden because they don't match the filter. Delete that and they show up again. Now it may be that I've accidentally uploaded the reports into the wrong place, so I'm going to click on that and I'm going to choose this little icon here that says move. One of the nice things I always noticed is the fact that when I moved and it's asking me for the new destination folder, it's saying, well, where do you want that to go? You can't go into clients, so clients is already grayed out. Your options are to the root of docs or to this new one called suppliers. So I'm going to move that to suppliers. It takes me straight there to show me it's done. And I'm going to move one of these pictures as well. So I'm going to say move that to suppliers. So now as I step through either the client folder or the supplier folder, we've got that information. Now this is all well and good. This is basic stuff coming out of the file manager. But what happens if I want to actually open the control or open the file? I've got this download option, but nobody wants to be downloading PDFs just to view them. Nobody wants to be downloading images just to view them. So how do I elegantly display that information in another window? Well, this is where the tip comes in. We come back to the Doc Manager control, bring up the Properties window, and have a look at the client-side events. I'm going to scroll down to the Selected File Opened method, and in here I'm simply going to put window.open, passing in e.file, which is obviously the event that we're dealing with, and we're going to say get full file name. When I click OK, run that straight back up, click on File, Doc Manager. Now if I double click on an option, I need to get my JavaScript correct. I come back to my client-side events, come down to Selected File Open. And we've got window.open e.file.getFullName. Click OK and run. Doc Manager, Clients, and double click. And we'll see straight away that a new window is spawned and the image is displayed. If I do the same with the PDF, double click on the webinars PDF, and here's the screenshot of our webinars page on our website. And that will work regardless of the folder that I'm in. So go to the fast and we can see the image. It's a really nice functionality straight out of the box that allows me to upload, manipulate, and open documents. Now the last thing I want to cover today is deployment. One of the frequent questions that I get asked is, how do we know what DLLs we need to ship with our site? One of our team, Alex, recently posted a blog on the DevExpress assembly deployment tool. It's a free download. I've got a link to it in a slide in a little while, but effectively it's a Visual Studio plugin that you download and install, and you get a really nice UI. Now, the Support Center article, which again I'll provide a link to, goes through in complete detail on exactly how to use it. But effectively, inside the DevExpress menu, you have a new option that would say All Platforms. When I choose the Assembly Deployment tool, I get this little floating panel. I can dock it to wherever I want. I get to nominate, where do I want to deploy the files to? So I'm going to say C:\dxtemp, and I want to analyze my product. You'll see straight away that all the libraries that have been referenced within my solution are shown. But quite literally, all I need to do is then click deploy. It's detected that the folder doesn't exist, so I'm saying, yes, I want to create a new one, and then it's saying it's done. So right now, if I go to my C:\dxtemp, we'll see that there's the folder and there's all the DLLs necessary to get this application up and running from a DevExpress point of view. All I'd need to do would be include those in a deployment package or just copy them to the bin folder on my website. It's a really, really useful tool, and we know that the team are going to continue to work on it and streamline it, but it's available right now, and certainly something that I personally use on a regular basis to make sure that the deployment aspects are correct. Well, that pretty much wraps up the technical aspect of our tips and tricks. What we'll do now is head over and look at what questions still need answering. So, Amanda?
Hey, Paul. Yeah, we do have a couple questions that came in, one of which is exporting to PDF does not support Unicode languages such as Arabic. Do you know when this functionality might be supported?
That's a great question. I don't know the answer to that, but what I would recommend is either whoever sent it, drop me an email direct, or better still, log a support ticket on the website, and one of the support team in that area will definitely respond.
Okay, great. If I double-clicked on the photo and changed the URL to open files in the supplies folder, which I don't have access to, what would happen?
Why wouldn't you have access to the files? You're going to have access for it to be displaying the thumbnail anyway. So if it's available to the file manager control to be showing as a thumbnail, it's going to be available for you to double click on.
Okay. AD, if you want or have more clarification on that question, let us know. Our CTO is apparently listening in on this webinar. Hi, Julian, and he says for the previous question about Arabic that we do not support right-to-left languages.
On the export.
Right. Let's see. Any support of PHP in DevExpress in the future?
I'm looking to Julian for this one. I'm not understanding what you would want to do with PHP and DevExpress as such. Obviously, our technologies are based on ASP.NET for the web, and we've also got the HTML5 and JavaScript solutions. If there's something specific that you need PHP for, please feel free to contact me and we can discuss options. I'm not sure that PHP is a technology or a language that certainly is in the aim of where we're heading.
Yeah, Julian does say we're a .NET server company, not Ruby or PHP. Let's see. We have a question from someone new to ASP.NET saying they need more help with Java client scripting, and what could you, Paul, suggest?
Again, it's a very open question. If there's specific things, if it's using our control set, then the support center and the online documentation is a great place to start. There's some fantastic examples up there. They're all well documented. There's documentation specifically for the client-side events. But if there's a specific issue or something direct you want help with, the support center is always the best place to start, or reaching out to one of the technical teams such as myself or Mehul, etc.
Great. Let's see. All right, we got a little bit of clarification on that earlier question about the supplies folder. He says, I meant if I had access to the client's folder files, but I don't have access to the suppliers, not to upload, but to enter it in the URL manually. It's kind of a security matter.
Yeah, there's a lot of different options available around the security of the file manager control. I mean, obviously some of it is down to permissions on the server, as well as permissions that you as a developer can set up and different things. The easiest thing is you have a specific problem that you want to work through, more than happy for you to touch base with me or the support center. Usually the sort of questions, if you look through the support center, the questions on securities, etc., usually come down to a server setting, or there are plenty of other options that you can control as a developer to achieve the results you want.
Hey, Amanda, can I just add a couple of things to what Paul has answered?
Yeah, just tell everybody who you are.
Hello, everyone. I'm Mehul Hari, the ASPNET Product Manager. And first of all, fantastic webinar. Best webinar I've seen all week. Thank you, Paul.
Thanks.
And not just because you use DevExpress ASP.NET products, but it was truly awesome. Thank you. Yes, as Julian, our CTO, mentioned and Paul mentioned, PHP, Ruby. I've even had people ask about Java. You know, people love the kind of things that our products do. They're based on .NET. Now, the good thing about .NET is if you're truly in love with like Ruby or PHP, you can use it as a language in .NET, but our items do not run on other platforms. Sorry. And someone asked about IntelliSense. We provide a lot of our ASP.NET controls have client-side API, meaning JavaScript support. So you can download a file, add it to your HTML page, and what you'll get is in Visual Studio you'll get help for client-side API. So if you really want that little bit of extra IntelliSense support, it's absolutely there. Just contact our support. They'll send you a link on how to add it. It's very easy. I think I've got a blog post about it somewhere. But yeah, and I'm sorry, that's all I really want to say. The RTL stuff, you can email Julian. He loves to hear about this kind of stuff. So yes, unfortunately we don't have it. Some of the products, ASP.NET is a platform that makes it a little bit easier to work with, let's say, RTF, but what this person was asking specifically was for PDF export, and that is not ASP.NET specific. So things that are, rich client environments, most likely we don't have great support for RTL. Anyways, I'll leave that to Julian. Just contact Julian, julianb@devexpress.com.
Awesome. Thanks, Mehul, for popping in there. And that looks like all of the questions, Paul.
No problem at all. And there's one last slide. So if you don't yet have the controls installed, head over to devexpress.com/trial, and the smaller URL underneath takes you straight to that knowledge base article on the deployment tool, which I definitely recommend you download and have a play with. It's fantastic. My email address is there and my Twitter handle. Feel free at any time to reach out with